We need one more speaker. Avisag, Verena, Alessandro is here.
Yes.
Miri is here. Galyna is missing.
Rabbi told me that someone is leaving. She said.
Okay, then we can start. Well, it's working. I think we can start our session, afternoon session. I hope everybody has had their coffees and we are ready to listen to a very interesting panel. And we will have 4 or maybe 5 speakers, we'll see. And this panel is dedicated to a very important issue, that's resistance, women in resistance. I would like to present to you our first speaker, Avisag Ben Shalom from Ben-Gurion University. She is a doctoral candidate in the Department of Jewish History at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. Her doctoral research examines the social plays of Laura Papo Bohoreta, staged in Sarajevo in the 1930s, focusing on intergenerational dynamics, linguistic change, and communal transformation in the pre-Holocaust Jewish community of Sarajevo. In addition to her doctoral research, Avisag serves as coordinator of the journal El Presente, Journal for Sephardic Studies, a peer-reviewed annual publication of the Moshe David Gaon Center for Ladino Culture at Ben-Gurion University. In this capacity, she edited a comprehensive section dedicated to Jewish women who fought in the Yugoslav partisan movement during World War II. And the title of her paper is Between Identity and Memory, World War II, Two Sephardic Women in the Resistance Movement, and Two Nations Remembering Them, the cases of Olga Alkalaj and Rena Abarbanel.
Can I have please... No, yes.
Microphone?
No.
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Professor Krinka. The stories of Jewish women who fought in Yugoslav Liberation Army during World War II are insufficiently known to the Israeli public. Few in Israel are familiar with this community's Holocaust experience and the contribution of many of its members to the anti-fascist struggle, much less the women who participated. To address this, I approached Dr. Eliezer Papo, chief editor of El Presente, Journal for Sephardic Studies, with a proposal to dedicate a section to the journal to Sephardic women who fought in Yugoslavia's partisan resistance. Among the few who addressed this subject is Raoul Teitelbaum in his 2015 book, One of Eight, Jews in the Partisan and Underground Movements in Yugoslavia during World War II. Most materials about these women exist only in Serbian, some in Ladino. I reached out to our colleague Naomi Cohen, born in Belgrade, who immigrated to Israel in the 90s and recently returned to Belgrade. She introduced to us the book Jewish Women Speak by Yasha Almuli, a Yugoslav publicist of Jewish origin, which chronicles the stories of Jewish women from Yugoslavia and Greece during the Holocaust. We chose to translate several stories into Hebrew. Working together on these materials, Naomi translating and researching archival sources, while I searched for Hebrew materials, raised fascinating questions about memory and historiography. Today, I want to explore how memory is fragmented through the stories of two Sephardic women from Belgrade, Olga Alkalaj and Rena Abarbanel, who later received the name Radmila Chorović. Their stories reveal a central tension. They were at once Jewish, Yugoslav, communist, and feminists. This multiplicity challenges our conventional narratives about Jewish resistance during the Holocaust. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Olga Alkalaj, you will see it later. Olga Alkalaj was a prominent feminist lawyer, an early Communist Party member in the 30s Belgrade, born to one of Belgrade's oldest Sephardic family. After Yugoslavia's occupation in April 41, she participated in underground operation until her capture several months later in October. Following severe torture, during which revealed nothing, she was transferred from Banica camp to Sarmishte, where we will visit tomorrow, and then transferred to the Jewish hospital. Her comrades came to rescue her, but she refused to escape. Thank you. Okay. No, this is the back one. Okay. Okay. This decision sparked rumors of defection within the partisan movement. Historian Vladimir Didier, who knew Alkalaj before the war, heard during the war from a Jewish medical student that she had seriously violated party discipline by choosing to remain with her Jews rather than continue fighting. She said, "I cannot leave them. My duty is to be with them while they are dying." In his later book, he phrased her words slightly differently. "I do not want to go free with you because I want to share my people's fate." The student concluded, "A strange girl, who would have thought she would behave that way?" Okay, no presentation, it's fine. The Didier could not understand Alkalaj's decision, and it reminded him of things she had said in a meeting between them in late July 41, before he joined the partisans, when Olga was already a leader in Belgrade underground fighting against the Germans. Oh. Okay, more. Okay, and okay, here. At one point, she said to me, "Vlado, it is so terrible. The Germans are sending all my people away." I asked her what she meant, and she added, "All my Jews." I fell silent. I asked myself whether I should tell her that, in my opinion, she should consider us all as her people. Didier was troubled by this for years. In my heart, I despised Olga because I thought she had betrayed our struggle. אוקיי, למה? דווקא לחצתי נכון, אבל לא... אוקיי, תודה. Okay. But decades later, after the war, Didier discovered her interrogation records, proving she revealed nothing under torture. In his 1981 biography of Tito, he sought to clear her name. Alkalaj remained faithful to her comrades. This is the special police department, the report. And he say, Olga Alkalaj remained faithful to her comrades, the communists. Even the most horrific torture could not break the fragile body of that girl who looked like a child. On the other hand, she did not want to part from her mother, Sophia, and together with her went to the place where the Germans executed people. In 1970, historian Yasha Almuli published an article honoring the Belgrade Parliament's decision to name a street after Alkalaj. He brought new evidence from Belgrade archives. Olga refused to escape because she knew that if she fled, the Germans would murder 100 Jews, including her parents, in retaliation. Due to persistent pressure from her comrades, Olga finally agreed to escape, but because of a curfew, they couldn't organize it that evening. The next morning, the Gestapo arrived and took Olga to a gas truck, where she perished. Raoul Teitelbaum, in his book, brought both reasons for her refusal: preventing the death of 100 patients and her desire to remain with her people. Teitelbaum focused on Dedier's inner turmoil regarding Olga Alkalaj, who, after defaming her name in his early writings, sought to clear her name and do her justice. He also brings another explanation for Dedier for Alkalaj's refusal, where he claimed it was an ancient Jewish practice, Kiddush Hashem, martyrdom, in order not to violate God's laws. He saw Kiddush Hashem as the supreme form of resistance to the Nazis in World War II, and therefore claimed, Olga Alkalaj remained faithful to her people, but also remained faithful to her way. For me, Olga Alkalaj's behavior is an expression of the purest universal humanism. This is the street here in Belgrade. And now I'm moving to Rena Abarbanel. Rena Abarbanel's story demonstrates even more starkly how commemoration fractures across archival boundaries. Born in 19 in Pirot, she moved with her family to Belgrade in 1933 and joined the Zionist youth movement Hashomer HaTzair. But a year later, like 16 other young Jews, she left for the Communist Youth League. They believed Palestine represented a distant solution, while international communism offered immediate answer to Jewish suffering. The fact that her brothers remained in Hashomer HaTzair and eventually immigrated to Israel, while she chose the communist movement, illustrates the different political trajectories among Jewish youth in Belgrade in the 30s. In 1940, Rena married Jovan Chorović, a Montenegrin communist leader. She converted to Orthodox Christianity. The church gave her a Serbian name, Radmila Chorović. This is the church. This is a famous church, and for who is in the first time in Belgrade, I think you should go and visit. It's a very special place. So she got married here. In July 1941, 4 months after Yugoslavia's occupation, Rena and Jovan fled to northwest Montenegro, to Dormitor, where she became active in the resistance and headed the anti-fascist front of women. Her deep commitment to the communist cause is evident in her final moments. This is Jovan, by the way, Jovan Chorović. And this is Rena with her brother Rudy and father Yaakov. So in her final moments, after captured by the Chetniks, her last words before execution were, "Know this, traitors, victory will be ours. Long live the Communist Party." Until 2005, when Almuli published his book with the chapter about Rena, she was commemorated in 2 different places, the former Yugoslavia territories and Israel, in 2 different languages and other 2 different names, the Serbian on one hand and the Sephardic on the other. In Israel, her brother Rudy submitted a testimony to Yad Vashem in 1965 under her Sephardic name, Rena Abarbanel, you can see over there, and the correct year of birth, 1918. In 1950, Yugoslavia issued a certificate of recognition awarded to fallen partisan fighter. Rena was honored under her Serbian name in this state commemoration. In 1974, Montenegro built a memorial with white tombstones for partisan fighter at Breza. Rena's tombstone reads Radmila Chorović, her Christian name, with wrong birth year, 1914. This is the grave after the war, and this is now in Breza. Okay, I will write back to it. Okay. Another story sheds light on how Rena rather understood her own name. One of her comrades, Milivoje Dulković, asked Rena to be the godmother of his daughter. After she agreed, she asked him and his wife Mara to name their daughter after her, Rena. They happily agreed. This testimony shows that she wanted her Jewish name to be remembered and carried forward. Only in 2009 did her niece Rena Yadid Abarbanel, who is named after her, place a Hebrew memorial stone at the Montenegro cemetery, inscribing her Jewish name, her parents' names, and an apple. Remember how our comrades collected money to bring her an apple before her execution, when she said, "I'm sad to die and miss the apples I love." In doing so, her niece created a space of memory where both of her names exist, both Rena and Rada. So this is what her niece did. You can see the name in Hebrew, the Sephardic name, Rena Abarbanel. And this is the tombstone in Montenegro. So she put upon it the Star of David and the Sephardic name and an apple. Bringing together these sources, some of which are missing from Yugoslav historiography and some from Israeli historiography, completes a picture that reveals the complexity of the identities of Sephardic Jews who joined the communist movement in Yugoslavia. Just as Olga was a prominent fighter in the partisan movement, she could feel belonging to her Jews. And just as Rena could shout, "Long live Communist Party," she could also ask her comrades to name their daughter after a Sephardic name, Rena. The partial forgetting reveals how archives cannot accommodate such complexity when they exist in isolation. Only by reading across archives, across languages, across borders, can we begin to understand how Sephardic women in Yugoslavia navigated identity, ideology, and resistance in impossible circumstances. And now, for the first time, these materials will be published together in El Presente, thanks to Eliezer and Naomi. Perhaps this will allow their complete stories, Jewish and communist, Rena and Radmila, Alkalaj the communist and Alkalaj who choose her people, to finally be told. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Avisag. We will have the discussion after all the papers have been read. So I want to present now our following next speaker. It's Verena Meier. And she is a PhD studied history. She has a PhD. She studied history, English philology, European art history, and philosophy at the Heidelberg University and also at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. From 2018 to 2024, she was a PhD candidate at the Research Center on Anti-Gypsyism in Heidelberg, where she completed her dissertation with distinction. Her work has been supported by fellowships from the Women in the Holocaust International Studies Center and also the Max Weber Foundation's Gerald D. Feldman Program, among others. She is currently a DFG-funded postdoctoral researcher at Heidelberg, examining the intersections of anti-Gypsyism, anti-Semitism, and colonial racism in the history of sciences, with a focus on criminology and medicine. Her publications include peer-reviewed articles on the Nazi female perpetrators, such as Criminal Police of Ravensbrück, Renen, Resistance of Sinti and Roma women, and gendered anti-Gypsy stereotypes. Her broader research interests include gender studies, police history, the history of ideas, and the histories of anti-Semitism and anti-Gypsyism. And she will be speaking to us about the following: letters to the Nazi regime between resistance and madness, under quotes. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Krinka, for the kind introduction, and thank you to everyone for organizing this conference, and particularly thank you to Lili, Samir, and Jakub Ascher, the founding members of WISC, but also Batya, who has been fundamental from the beginning of WISC, and Mara, who's not here, so I also just want to mention these important people behind WISC and want to make also a disclaimer. WISC is also working on educational material, which is very important. And currently there is a group working on daily aspects of resistance. And I worked with Alessandro, who's going to speak after me, in a group in the past years. And we published on the website of WISC also educational material on this topic that includes women from Italy, but also Sinti and Roma women from Germany and Austria. And now I want to talk about a topic that I started dealing with throughout my PhD thesis, and a form of interacting with governmental institutions that maybe we also know. If you feel treated unfairly, or if you feel like you experience injustice, a common way of countering this injustice that you experienced is writing letters to authorities and complain about it. It's a practice that has been there since the development of modern state apparatuses in the 19th century, and is also a practice that is commonly used today. But under the circumstances of genocidal policies of the Nazis, it carries a totally different dimension, and we can question how these acts by people who wrote such petitions can be perceived, whether they can be perceived as daily acts of resistance, and also how the Nazi state apparatus countered these letters. And that's why there's also the quotation madness in the title. Because, and that has been also a tradition that existed before the Nazi regime, the authorities did not have any legal means of encountering obsessive letter writing, as they called it. So they couldn't incarcerate a person in prison, so they pathologized them. So I refer to the label, and it's a social construct, and to label the querulousness, or in German, Querulanten, and it was perceived already in the 19th century as a psychological disorder. And Sonja Mühlmann and Cornelius Borg define a querulous, they are contemporary researchers, define a querulous person as someone who insists so vehemently on recognition of the injustice that he or she has experienced, so that this becomes a spanner in the works of the legal system and is relegated from the legal system to the psychiatry by pathologizing these people. So querulousness was initially regarded by state authorities and the judiciary and the medical professionals as deviant behavior, so someone who writes obsessively and disturbs the daily practice of state authorities and administration. But in a second step, it was seen as an illness that needed to be treated in mental hospitals. And can I have the pointer, please? And I came across this in context of the Nazi persecution of Sinti and Roma, and I already presented some parts of it also in WISC conferences, because I came across in the files by the criminal police, not just by police material, but also I came across letters written by Sinti and Roma women asking for the release of their husbands from the concentration camps after they were incarcerated in the year 1933 by the criminal police. In the regional context that I focus on, they were incarcerated in Buchenwald or Sachsenhausen. And it mostly affected young men who were able to work, and the families were left with elderly people and women. So the women started in Magdeburg to organize, and either write these petitions themselves or have them written by supporters. And the Nazi structure of the criminal police reacted to this. They had a special department inside the criminal police. It's here in German. It says, I don't know, it's not working here. It's Prüfung Gesuche Aufhebung Vorbeugungshaft. So VA 2B3 and VA or 5A 2B4. According to regional contexts. And this was already in the Nazi law for incarcerating anyone by the criminal police inside the concentration camp. It was in the legal structure that these letters could be written, and the Nazi authorities needed to deal with this. I came across another example of a Sinti woman and her husband in the year of 1933, living in Salzwedel, also in the year where the Operation Workshire Reich was, when many of the men were incarcerated. And in this year, they complained about being unfairly treated by the National Socialist Welfare Organization, which was supposed to support them, but because of who they were and how they were seen in the Nazi racist ideology, they were disadvantaged. And then they also wrote to the authorities, and in this case they were accused by the city and district administration that their claims had been unjustified and that the criminal police criminalized her, so the woman of the family, arguing that she conducted knowingly false accusations, so she would betray basically the administrations with her arguments. Thereupon, she was sentenced by the lay court to 3 months imprisonment. And after the sentence, she wrote another petition to the Reich Ministry of Justice, in which she's complaining about the state prosecutor at the local level. And furthermore, she wrote other petitions to the district president, in which she complained about the investigation procedure by the criminal police officer. And the local authorities labeled Johanna H. I anonymize many of the people mentioned here, not because I don't want that they are remembered, but because I deal with stigmatization that is still going on. And many Sinti or Roma families carry the same last name and sometimes hide their identities. And I don't want to open identities of descendants if they want to hide it because they are afraid of discrimination. So she was labeled, Johanna H., as a quarreler, and her claims were dismissed and pathologized. And you see it in this document. This pathologization occurred in June 1938, also in the same year as the Operation Workshire Reich. And in the same month, the head of the security police instructed all Gestapo officers to register quarrelers. So she was listed here. And on June 18, the Magdeburg Gestapo instructed its subordinate authorities to register all people who could be described in this sense. So you have this order passed down through all the hierarchies of the Gestapo institutions. And then her registration together with actually 15 other people in Salzwedel. And among these 15 people are also, for example, 3 pastors, mostly from the Bekennende Kirche, the confessing church, but also communists and the Sinti couple, so other groups of oppressed who were mixed together and were accused of being mad because they wrote petitions. In the directives, here you see the documents. I want to point out 3 particularities. So you have a central directive from the security police and Gestapo from the beginning of June 1938 to register all people who could be considered as quarrelers. And these directives served as legal frameworks for the local police officer and Gestapo officers to register these people, but there's no definition. Who could be considered as a quarreler, and we see it in other contexts also, like the persecution of so-called asocials. It's often that the police officers themselves could implement their own visions of people who matched the stereotypes. So it was a very wide tool for repression. And these instructions furthermore reveal that the Nazis, the Gestapo, aimed at a complete registration of all crawlers, as they said. But there's no further directive how to proceed with all these people who were registered until the outbreak of the Second World War. And shortly before the outbreak of the Second World War, state repression intensified, and only on July 12, 1938, the Reich Court handed down a verdict against Zita N., who was a head teacher from Sigmaringen, and she was initially incarcerated in the sanatorium Zwiefalten, so in a mental hospital, in August 1938. And a previous ruling by the Rottweil Regional Court in February 1938 was overturned by the Reich Court, so the highest court, in July 1938, following an appeal lodged by the Public Prosecutor's Office. The dispute between both court decisions was paragraph 42b of the Criminal Code, and this paragraph was a new addition to the Criminal Code under the Nazi regime, and it was established in 1934. And it was a result of the so-called law against dangerous habitual criminals and based on measures for their security and reform from 24th of November 1933. So the same law applied to the incarceration, or was used later on for the incarceration of so-called asocials. This new paragraph was based on discussions from the late German Empire and its establishment of the Criminal Code, as well as discussions by criminologists during the Weimar Republic. So we have a longer tradition that preceded the Nazi regime. And criminologists already had reflected on measures that can be imposed instead or in addition of penalties in order to reduce the so-called dangerousness of offenders for the individual and so-called public security, especially if they acted on the basis of a mental disorder. So paragraph 42b thus permitted the courts to order the placement in a mental hospital if the offense was committed in the state of insanity or madness or diminished responsibility. In the first year of the new law, 506 people were incarcerated according to this law, and here you see the other numbers, so it increased. And in the case of Zita N., who you see also on this picture, the regional court had initially ruled that her complaints did not constitute a threat to the legal order, even if she caused considerably public nuisance or offenses. And thus, the new law could not apply. That's what the regional court said. This estimation was then overruled by the Reich Court. And on March 14, 1939, the Berlin Secret Police State Office, Gestapo, sent this ruling against Zita N. to all subordinate Gestapo officers and recommended it as a guideline for future dealings with prowlers and complainers. So this matches to the registration of all people. And then they said all who are registered should be handled accordingly. This circular also stated that the number of quarrelers and complainers has been increasingly recently, contributing significantly to the public unrest and jeopardizing legal certainty and the administration of justice. And Zita N. was eventually murdered in the Grafeneck killing center as part of the Nazi euthanasia killing program, the Action T4. And with this directive from March 1939, the Gestapo established a unified procedure in how to deal with the quarrelers and complainers. And in my future research, I want to trace these trajectories of people who were affected in greater detail and with a gender differentiated analysis. The case of Zita N. reveals that she grew up in a large family with 9 siblings, whom only 4 were alive anymore, and she was sentenced at the age of 61 as a woman of age. She was never married and without children of her own. After her school education in Rottweil, she visited a female labor school for 1 year And from the age of 15 to 21, she was a female teacher and later on went to a German cloister or monastery for women, the Sisters of Charity in St. Vincent de Paul in Untermarchtal. And then also later on argued she never wanted to go to this monastery. It was her sister's decision. And after, being out of the monastery again and working as a teacher, she found it increasingly difficult to set a foot in regular life again. And that's where she got into conflicts with other colleagues at school and directors of the school. So we can question here the gender dimensions also. What did it matter that she was a woman, not married, and with no children? The concept, and now I'm concluding, of quarrelers and the description of madness is lies at a nexus of law and justice or injustice, and this area of tension evolves around the question of whether and when the persistent assertion of rights is considered as justified or when it was perceived as too excessive and irrational. For the recipients of the letters, it was a matter of distinguishing between legitimate legal claims and behavior that was potentially unjustified, excessive, or perceived as deviant. This decision-making process was embedded in an unequal power relationship that shapes the communication patterns between both communicators, and the recipients of the letters represented the hegemonic power, while the writers themselves were the ones who were dominated and were demanding their rights. In the process of labeling them as troublemakers, it was crucial that they were denied the role of equal communication partners. And we have to, that's my argument, see it in a greater context of Nazi repression and resistance, and then trace these trajectories of people like the other 15 on the list of Salzwedel that I mentioned. And what I'm also curious about is how did this Nazi law apply to other annexed areas such as Austria or Czechoslovakia? Did they implement these orders in these contexts as well? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Verena. This is really a new niche or field of research, which I see from your research has yielded good results, and I hope you continue in this on this path. We will go on. Our next speaker is Alessandro Matta. He is the founder and director of the Association Memorial of the Shoah in Cagliari, in Sardinia. He is a historical researcher specializing in the history of the small Jewish presence in Sardinia during the years of fascist persecution and the Holocaust from 1938 to 45, as well as in Holocaust cinematography and the representation of the Holocaust in mass media. He is currently publishing with Giuntina Editore a book on the history of the Jews of Sardinia and those connected to Sardinia during the Holocaust years. He has completed seminars at Yad Vashem and the Memorial de la Shoah in Paris, as well as several other seminars and specialization courses on the Holocaust with institutions such as Yad in Unum and the Elie Wiesel Institute of Bucharest. He also earned a post-laureate advanced university qualification in Holocaust education at the University of Florence, directed by Professor Silvia Guetta. And beginning this year, he also teaches in this program, offering a course on the Holocaust, on Holocaust education through cinematography and audiovisual tools. Matta has published several articles on his two main areas of specialization. He is the author of the book, The Jews of Sardinia During the Years of Persecution in the Shoah, 1938 to 45, published in Italy by Giuntina. Alessandro, today he will speak on Sardinian saviors, women during the Holocaust, between resistance and genocide. You have the floor. I don't know which microphone is this one.
Okay, I can take this one if go the Philos. Okay. Firstly, thank you to the organizers of the conference, the University of Belgrade and the WISC Center, with I collaborate from years, Lili Zemir and Jakov Asher, and also the other colleagues like Verena. Thank you for this organization and this second invitation, that is a third invitation, but the second time in Belgrade. This topic, the Sardinian saviors woman during the Holocaust between resistance and genocide, it is connected a particularly historical research that is today still a work in progress, and go to the publishing in 2024 to this book published in Italy in 2024 by Giuntina, Gli ebrei nella Sardegna durante le persecuzioni antiebraiche e la Shoah, that you can found also in Amazon. And this particular research, historical research, attempt to answer some important questions. How much were the Jews in Sardinia during the 1938? What about their history in Holocaust years? And how much these local histories are connected to the Holocaust in and out of Italy? It is a particular question because we know today that the Sardinia, like all the south of Italy, was liberated by the Allied at the 8th September 1943, and nobody from the south of Italy was deported by the Nazi fascists in the concentration or extermination camps. So all the histories, also the history about the righteous, are very, very particularly. But we can talk about the Holocaust or about the righteous in Sardinia, or the Holocaust is only a shadow in the history of this family, also in a place that has no anymore a Jewish community from 1492, with the expulsion of all the Jews by Isabella of Castillas, Fernando d'Aragona, Edict of Alhambra. But we say today, also with this historical research, that from the 19th century, in 1848, with the Edict of Tolerance from Carlo Alberto, some presence of Jews reborn to start their presence in the Iceland. And also the story of the Holocaust in Italy, it is subdivided in two particular phases. A phase of persecution of the rights between 1938 and 1943, with the anti-Semitic laws by the fascism, and the properly Holocaust years or persecution of the lives years between 1943 and 1945. Before to enter in the mostly particular story of the Savior's woman, the righteous among the nation Sardinian woman, a necessary introduction must taken about the concept of the righteous among the nations. There are two definitions, one religious definition and one legal definition by the Israeli state. The legal definition is defined by the righteous among the nations Yad Vashem constitutional law, and the religious definition based on the Torah, beatitude for all to hope in them. Lamed Vov 30+6, the legend of 36 righteous that take with them the health of the bed of the world in the troubled moments, but they don't say that they are the righteous, and after they good made, they return in the life in the shadow. And this is the life also about this woman. All the histories of this woman are outside Sardinia. Today, only 7 people in Sardinia, from Sardinia, are recognized by Yad Vashem as righteous among the nations, and from these 7, 3 are women. 2 are women of Sardinian born, and a third woman is a Sardinian for marriage, and we call that sarda d'entradura in Sardinian language. These personal stories are connected on three different places. Sister Rosina De Muro in Torino, Carmen Arzeri Loriga in Rome, and Bianca Ripepi married Soju with Rhodes, the Italian colony of Rhodes that was an Italian territory. Sister Giuseppina Rosina De Muro was a nurse, a nun of the Doctors of Charity of San Vincenzo de Pauli convent in Sardinia, and operative with Father Ruggero Cipolla in Torino Prison Le Nuove, and is here his work about Righteous Among the Nations. It was born in Lanusei, in the province of Nuoro, Sardinia, November 20, 1903, and she entered in Marina Asylum after she take the vote to the San Vincenzo de Pauli convent in Baile Street in Cagliari at 20 years old. After some years, very, very little some years, she came in Torino in 1923, and here began a service in San Salvario convent. But the 31st December 1925, she had a visit to Le Nuove prison in Torino, in which she had an illumination to dedicate her entire lives to the imprisoned people, the imprisoned woman in the prison of Le Nuove di Torino. And he's here from 1943 to 1945 that rescued a lot of people. Precisely after 18 September 1943, when the Nazis take the control of the prison, Sister Rosina De Muro bring a very particular activity with Father Ruggero Cipolla to save not only Jewish prisoners, but also political prisoners, made a sort of new ala of the prison, and taking this prisoner, political and Jewish, from this part of the prison, from the Nazis, and bring them to them. Thanks to this activity, for example, Mario Zargani and Eugenia Tedeschi, husband and wife, were saved. They are the parents of the very famous Jewish Italian writer Aldo Zargani, that published their memories with Le Nuove in Torino in the 90th year, Per violino solo, La mia infanzia dell'Aldiquà. But many peoples are saved by her in this year, until the liberation of Torino, where with a car she go to the Nazis to contract with them the opening of the city of the Torino to the partisans and to the Allied. After the war, Sister De Muro founded the House of the Heart, the Casa del Cuore, to bring the rehabilitation of former prisoners, and in 1955 received the gold medal for her services. She died in October 18, 1965, in the prison Le Nuove di Torino. She was in sick, but she insisted to return in the prison to take care to the imprisoned woman, and she died in the carcere Le Nuove di Torino. Only in 2023 she was recognized, thanks to the testimonies, as Righteous Among the Nations by Yad Vashem. Carmen Azzeri Loriga, born in Cagliari in 1892, and living in Rome until her death in 1992, she was the wife of Francesco Loriga, a lawyer, also him from Sardinia. During the Holocaust, according also with their other friends, Francesco Giordano and Camilla Lai Giordano, they saved the lives of the Soria Ascarelli family, their home proprietor. After and during the roundup of the Jews of Rome, the 16 October 1943, they put in safe the couple Soria Ascarelli, and after the 30 November 1943, with the order of police number 5, when also the Italian police take participation directly in the arrestation of the Jews and their deportation, according to the Giordano Lai family, they put another place of hiding for them in the house of Giordano Lai family. A recognition for them was also them mostly in record, because only in January 2006, Gianna Di Neppi, Lydia Soria's niece, found in a box in her parents' basement in Rome containing hundreds of family letters and documents testifying to the wartime actions of the Loriga and Giordano families. And on 30 July 2008, Yad Vashem recognized Carmen and Francesco Loriga, and also Camilla Giordano and Alberto Giordano as righteous among the nation. The third and mostly also bigger history is Bianca Ripepi married Soju. Bianca was not Sardinian of origin, was born in Reggio Calabria in 1922, daughter of Antonino, a socialist railway worker with an anti-fascist family that had problems with the fascism. She became a teacher putting their exams in the Italian colony of Leros and in Rhodes. And here in Rhodes, she encountered Girolamo Soju. Girolamo Soju was an anti-fascist provenance from a Gallura anti-fascist family. He was in Rhodes in prison by the fascism because he solidarized with the natives of the colonies in Leros, and he was put by the fascists in Rhodes in forced residence. The two took marriage in 1943 in church and returned to life in Rome after Bianca passed their exams for teacher. But still, too, from 1938, their resistance against the fascism and the anti-Semitic law was clearly. They put in their house a secret school for the Jewish little boy expelled by the schools, the Italian schools, after the anti-fascist law, and bring with them this little child boy to give them an instruction, a sort of not Jewish school made by them. On the 23 July 1944, when the Nazis start the roundup of the Jews of Rhodes, is thanks to Bianca that the Jewish of Turkish nationality had saved their life, because Bianca take her bicycle and made kilometers to talk with the ambassador, the consulate of Turkey in Rhodes, talking with them and bring them to the place where there were in course the arrestation. And thanks to Bianca, the Jewish people with the Turkish nationalism can save their life. But the two also bring in her home a little baby, passing her for their son. This little child had also a miraculous, because after 1945, the parents of this little child survived Auschwitz, returned to Rhodes, and they restitute the son to the parents. A very incredible story, but also a return in the shadow, because until 2002, Bianca didn't talk anymore, Girolamo didn't talk anymore about that, and only in 2002, when Bianca wrote this book, From Rodi to Tavolara, they tell about this history. And this happened a miracle. This book was traduced in all the language, also in English. One day in Australia, an old woman buy this book and read this book because it was about Rhodes, and she recognized herself as the baby saved by the Soju family. And then she contacted Yad Vashem. Only in 2013, Girolamo and Bianca were recognized righteous among the nations, many years also after the death of Girolamo, and some years after the death of Bianca that died in Cagliari in 2005. All this history are remembered also in Cagliari in this garden. It is the garden of Righteous Among the Nations, made by Kenabura Friendship Association Sardos Pro Israele, with these 7 Turks with their 7 names and also the 3 names of Sardinian women. And is a particular garden because in 2024 we inaugurated here also a Turk in remembrance of the victim of the pogrom of 7 October 2023 and the righteous that saved the people during the pogrom of 2023. This research is still open. Only very recently, I interviewed the 12th February Franca Marcelli Turco, that is the son of a couple of Rome that saved the life and after they lived in Sardinia. And I will bring to you the link for this interview. So this is this still work in progress with possible future new righteous among the nations, men and women. Thanks to all, Toda Rabah. I dedicate this intervention to the memory of my mother, Leah Pisky, Zikrono Libracha, that passed away in this date 4 years ago and this time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. And here we see how God and humans work in mysterious ways to save life. I don't know, I think we don't have our next speaker, Galyna Kutsovska. She is not with us, no? Okay. So our last speaker today in this panel is Miri Nehari. And she is a PhD, holds a PhD. She was born in Israel in a kibbutz, second generation to Shoah survivors. Her father was recruited by the Mossad Le'aliyah Bet to head the Bricha movement in Poland. Dr. Nehari is a psychologist, educational, clinical, and health psychologist, also trained in working with trauma. She is chairperson of the Bricha Legacy Association. The Bricha movement from 1944 to 1950 was the underground organization that helped Jewish Holocaust survivors escape from post-Second World War from Europe to Eretz Yisrael, Palestine. The Bricha organized the migration to Israel of about 300,000 survivors. The story of Bricha is not well known. We seek to give this chapter the place it deserves in the Israeli and Jewish collective memory. We want to raise awareness to the Bricha's achievements in helping the Holocaust survivors and its importance in the fight for the Israeli state. And Miri will talk about the following. Her topic is Women Trailblazers in the Bricha Movement.
Thank you very much.
And the pointer, please. I want to thank very deeply the organizers. It refuses. Look at me. Okay. Because it is not self-evident that this topic is for me, but for many it isn't, belongs in this in this subject, in this theme. So I thank the organizers in Israel and in Belgrade very much. Today I want to shine a light on the trailblazers. It's like the leaders. It's ladies who had important roles, leading roles in the Bricha. Now, before you said a few more words about the Bricha, I will say a few more words about the Bricha. Before that, I want to say that Professor Michal Govrin has written a book about her mother, which she called Mother's Silence. She dedicated it to her mother, Rena Govrin, about whom I will speak a little. And I want to give these women a voice. She talks about the silence, and I want to talk about their voice. I chose to speak about a few women, not one in length and in details, but a few women so that I can give like a drone picture from above about the Bricha and what it's all about. So I hope I pressed the right thing. No, I didn't. Yeah, no, okay. The Bricha movement, Bricha meaning escape. I will explain a little more about it. Was the organization that actually organized this underground journey of Holocaust survivors in Europe. Now, the story about the Jews, Holocaust survivors coming to Israel, making Aliyah, has two chapters. One is the Bricha, which is in Europe. We call it the land, the Bricha on the land, or Aliyah on the land. And the second part is the Aliyah on the sea, by the boats, the Mapilim boats. The story of the boats, Mapilim boats, illegal boats, is more researched and more well known, at least in Israel. The story of a Bricha is not well known, not well researched, and not well recognized in terms of its importance in the story of the Holocaust survivors and the making of the Jewish of Israel. It is an amazing story, and like the Shoah in different countries is different, and in different ways, camps or forests or partisans, so is the Bricha. It has many layers and many branches, and I'll talk today about just one branch, but very small, important branch, but only one. So in this what you see here is they actually walked. Many of them. The story usually is that from the camp or the forest or the hiding place, they went home to see who had survived from the family, and when they realized nobody did, they decided to go to Israel, and they arrived at Marseille or Metapunto or Bari in Italy and got on the ships. How did they do it? How did they come from Warsaw or Tashkent or Siberia or Germany to the ships? No papers, no money, no health, no family, no country, actually. It's to me, it's still a miracle, and I'm researching it for quite a few years. So I heard this lady tell her story, a Bricha, a woman tell her story to school children, and she said, we walked and we walked and we walked, and then we walked and we walked and we walked, and then we walked again. They actually walked, and they had to go through borders always with forged papers. And okay, so they walked and they went in trains. The same trains that went to the east now went to the west, if they worked. Not always. They went on lorries, and they're resting. I think it shows how the difficult conditions were in the Bricha. This is just to show the end of my story about the Bricha, to give you just a sense of how multiple and complex this operation was. Nobody wanted the Jews, and the British, more than most, fought against the Bricha, because they knew that any Jew walking the trails of Europe will try to get to Israel, which they did not let them come in. So just to give you an example of how, this is children in a monastery, to rescue children, to find them. How do you find them? And how do you get them out? Not always would the Christians give them back? But that's not the story for today. So I have three groups. One I will not talk about is just Bricha women. And their stories are so intense and so interesting. And we in the Bricha Association, Legacy Association, are collecting the stories now and creating an archive of Bricha stories, not Shoah stories, but Bricha stories. Most of the Shoah survivors talked about the Shoah and saw themselves as they thought giving testimony about the Shoah is what's important, and it is and it was. But what happens to them? How did they deal? They had the bad luck to be survivors. They're not. There's no, in Israel at least. They're not recognized at all. So I counted 12 very thoroughly. 12 people getting married together. They were so lonely, so destituted. Just finding. I have a whole theme of love in the Bricha. Not today. The trailblazers are either survivors, and Lena Kichler is an example here. To somebody who didn't know, she wrote a book. Lena, she opened and held a home. The Bricha didn't call them orphanages, but children's homes, because maybe their parents or somebody from the family will find them. So she had a children's home in Zakopane in Poland, and wrote a beautiful book, My 100 Children, very beautiful book. So she represents the trailblazer Shoah survivor women, which I will focus on today. And Ada Sereni is the emissary from Israel, who was the commander of the Bricha in Italy, both of the Hapala and the Bricha. And she was a great lady, but for another story. So how do I, it's amazing.
חזרתי הביתה ותקף נסענו לצ'כיה, בגלל זה שהיו שם הפולנים האלה, חיפשו היהודים האלה של היטלר לא גמר איתם, אז הם רצו לגמור איתם, פשיסטים, פולנים. ונסענו לצ'כיה, ושם זה כבר היו ישראלים שם, מישראל, שאלו אותנו, אנחנו רוצים לעבוד או משהו, לעזור ליהודים, לעבור לגבולות לזה. כולם אמרו, איפה זה? הם נסעו לגרמניה ואני נשארתי בצ'כיה. וככה התחלתי לעבוד. באתי לגבול, אני ראיתי שיכולים לסדר משהו. אז חזרתי לפראג ואמרתי להם שיכולים לעבור, ננסה 10 איש, 20 איש. ננסה איך זה ילך, וזה באמת הלך. נתתי גם כסף, נתתי גם וודקה, נתתי גם לייקות. אני באתי עליהם לגבול באופן רשמי, ואמרתי שאני רוצה היום בערב 120 איש להעביר פה. אז הם לוקחו כסף, לוקחו זה, מה לוקחו, והם העבירו את המשמרת כמה קילומטרים במקום אחר. אף אחד לא הסתדר כמו אני הסתדרתי. אם אני נסעתי לאיזה מקום, אז הטרנספורטים לא הלכו, חיכו עד שאני אבוא.
אז כמה היית בזמן הזה?
16, 17.
This lady is responsible for, she worked on the border between Czechoslovakia and Austria. 10,000 people owe their lives to this girl, Fuchs, Miriam Fuchs, Marishka. And she was, actually she talks about, we can have a few people, 10,000 people she is responsible. And she was, wait, I will tell you about her. I went too fast. She was born in Poland, lost her entire family during the Holocaust, was in labor camp and therefore survived. She was recruited to the Bricha and was put in charge in the border of the crossing in Ash between Czechoslovakia and Austria. Quote, "The young girl became a legend. Her agility, resourcefulness, bravery, and devotion to her work made her wanted in many operations. She wasn't only in charge of this border, but she was given other missions, always underground, and always dangerous. She was actually in danger for her life. And I think the one main route through which Jews went was from Poland through Czechoslovakia to Austria and then to Germany, to Italy, or to France. I want to go back for a minute. I want to say that the fact that women, Jewish women, at least in the Jewish tradition of Eastern European at the time, for women to be leaders or trailblazers was especially, it was something to special. It was woman's place is in the home. She's not to perform in the public domain. Certainly for Jewish women from the East. And I hear now a lot about partisans here in Yugoslavia. It was in Yugoslavia, or the communist country, not so much for the Jewish women. And I think that times of stress or extreme, like war or the Bricha time, allow some opening for women to change the role that they are actually by the culture supposed to carry, like the home, and it changes their self identity and the roles that people are willing to give them and to follow them. What happened? So this is Marushka. Tov. I'll go to Raga. I promised to talk about her. Raga or Rena was the mother of Professor Michal Govrin, which I mentioned before. She was born in Krakow. Her husband and her son, 2-year-old or 1-year-old son, were murdered during the war in front of her eyes. She was a member of 10 women whose group became known as the Zehnerschaft, the group of 10. 10 women who supported each other physically and spiritually in Auschwitz, Birkenau, the Death March, and Bergen-Belsen. She survived. She was appointed the Bricha commander in the British zone in Germany. Now, you know the zone situation. Now, the British zone is the most a difficult zone because the Brits were actually fighting the Bricha. They would take transports or groups of Jews who had managed to come from Poland to Germany, sometimes put them physically, violently on lorries to send them back to Poland because they didn't want them to go to Israel. At the first year in the DP camps, Jews were not recognized as a different entity. There were Poles or Ukrainians or Russians or Germans. So for a lady to be the commander in the German zone was extremely difficult. And I think this is a trailblazer. She would fight the Brits. Actually, she took care of the Exodus ship, the story, no? The Exodus Mapilim were brought back to Germany and she took care of them. And there's a very exciting story about some 230 something pregnant women from the Exodus, which were taken to France to be sent back to Israel. And the story never mentions who organized this. They were taken and it was organized and they were put on a ship. But who did the organization? Despite British antagonism, it was this lady, which is, in my view, it's one of my heroines. Okay? I'm not giving up on this one. What's that? It's not working.
בראש ההתארגנות המקומית עומדים יוצאי תנועות הנוער ופרטיזנים שיצאו מהיערות. חסיה בורשטיין, פרטיזנית מגטו ביאליסטוק, גויסה לקיבוץ על מנת לקלוט יתומים. ילדים שנמצאו במנזרים או הוסתרו על ידי הפולנים ונפדו בקשיים ובכסף רב. היא הייתה אז בת 23.
היו לי בעיות עם כל ילד כמעט, למשל דנושה, כשהיא נכנסה ולא ראתה צלב על הקיר, התחילה לבכות, אמרתי, מדוע את בוכה? כי אין פה צלב. אמרתי, תתפללי. בצהריים הודיעו לי שמחר בבוקר צריך לצאת, בצורה כזאת שלא ייפול איזשהו חשד, כי הרי יצאו במחתרת. הודיעו לי שכולנו נעבור בתור משפחות גרמניות שחוזרות למולדתם. אז אמרתי, אי אפשר לשבת על חבילות, צריך להתחיל לפעול. לארגן את החיים כאילו שאנחנו נשארים שם פה שנים. זה יהיה חודש, יהיה נהדר, יהיה חצי שנה, יהיה פחות טוב, אבל אנחנו נפעל. יום אחד, זה היה במרץ, באו להגיד לי שמחר עוזבים, אבל אני לוקחת רק את הגדולים. אמרתי, אי אפשר לקרוא את הילדים. אני לא מפרידה יותר בין אחים ואחיות. יצאנו בחושך, בהתחלת הלילה, ומשאיות עם ברזנטים מכוסים. ואמרו, אתם לא מדברים, תתנהגו בשקט, אין איש באוטו, שקט. לא להוציא הגה.
Chassia was born in Grodno, Poland. During the war in Bialystok ghetto, she served as liaison for the underground. After the liquidation of the ghetto, she worked for the partisan groups, smuggled under an Aryan identity. She was blonde. She had what they call good appearance. She smuggled weapons, ammunition, food, and medicine for the partisans. After the war, she joined the Bricha and opened the first Jewish children home in Lodz. She collected children from monasteries, Christian families, and hidden places. And in Poland, it was a very difficult task and dangerous to go to the countryside to Polish families who had Jewish children was dangerous. She collected children. I'll make it short. One of her children, as a grown-up, said that with warmth and with games, she gave us back a little of our lost childhood. Now, I'm a psychologist. I want to tell you the discussions and the work of psychologists now after 7th October, debates and seminars and teachings, and how do we deal with the trauma that the children and the adults have lived through in the 7th of October. And it's a big issue, and it is a big issue. And this 23-year-old, please finish. I'm concluding. Lady dealt with a bigger trauma, the Shoah trauma. I have one. I can't resist. This is another children's home in Otvodsk, and the reason I'm showing it is the girl there is me. So that's it. And now the last for conclusion. One lady she was the head of the Bricha, the commander of the Bricha, in Klatsko, Poland, at the border of the Poland and Czechoslovakia, after the Kielce pogrom at the summer of 1946. 700 Jews crossed the border from Poland, most to Czechoslovakia and some directly to Germany, in 3 months. So she had probably about 10,000 Jews a month to take care of them, illegally, clandestinely. One woman, the person to her right is my father. The person to her left is the other Israeli emissary. All the rest are Shoah survivors. And the Bricha movement, and that's for the conclusion, was started by the survivors. In 1944, the war is still raging. Territories that have been cleaned from German soldiers like Russia, West Russia and Eastern Poland, or Italy, south of Italy, survivors organized, self-organized themselves. I don't know where they had the inner strength for two things mainly: to help each other and to find ways to go to Israel. So this is the second part of the Aliyah to Israel, the Ha'apala on the ships. And I thank you very, very much for
Thank you. Thank you very much, Miri. And now we've also heard a new topic, a new theme.
What's the word?
And we had a variation today in this panel of very interesting talks on different aspects of not only resistance, but saving people and doing the right thing in very difficult conditions. So the floor is open now for discussion and for any questions that you might have for our very excellent speakers today. So please, the floor is yours.
First of all, I want to thank very much all the speakers. It was really fascinating. And although the hours are very problematic, but everybody was awake and listening, so good for you. I have a question to Mary. Teaching history for the last 35 or 40 years, there is very little in Hebrew books about the Bricha, especially about women in the Bricha. Now, you mentioned that the Shomer HaTzair was also involved.
I didn't mention, but it was one of the...
So my question is, have you approached the Shomer HaTzair in Israel to do something serious about the project memorizing those heroines of the Bricha?
You mean
Not only Chassia.
First of all, we have just 2 months ago, we had 2 months ago,
Yeah.
we had a meeting of Moreshet and the Bricha Association, and
It's the second. 2 years
Yeah.
ago I was, but you weren't there.
I
Now
wasn't
you're
there. I wasn't there. Yeah. So we are thinking about doing things together, and we hope very much that the archive of the Bricha will be in maybe in the archive of Moreshet, and this is something we hope to do. I wanted to ask Chaim Guri, who was a poet and a journalist. He wrote a very interesting book about the Eichmann trial, and he was in the Bricha. He was a Palmach member, and he was in the Bricha, and he said that for him, the Bricha was the opportunity to meet his people that he never knew as someone who was born in Palestine and didn't know the Jewish world in Europe. I wonder if your father had the same experience. I don't know if your father was born in Israel, but...
No.
Okay.
The Ben-Gurion for non-Israelis is a very well-known poet and writer in Israel, and he said that the Bricha was the experience. He was an emissary in Hungary, and he said the Bricha was the experience that changed him. The meeting with the Holocaust survivors changed him. My father was born in Poland, and actually he's a survivor himself, and he managed to get to Israel in 1943. He fled to Russia. So no, he was okay. I just do, but in Belgrade, do you know the story of the Bricha in Yugoslavia? Because there's a wonderful story, extremely interesting, and it shed good light on Yugoslavia. Do you know what happened? No, the Yugoslavians. You're not Yugoslavian. Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just to continue what Lily just said, I have to emphasize that not only the Shomer HaTzair was involved in the Bricha, like a month ago or less than a month ago, I was talking about Beitar movement women, at least 5, and we just talk, Yoel and I right now, Dror, and a lot of youth, Jewish youth movements were involved in the project in the Bricha. And something personal, when I spoke to Miri, I visited Miri, she actually told me that the journey my mother had or fled from Europe to Israel, she was one of the people who was saved by the Bricha people. So, yeah.
Mary, you started talking about Yugoslavia. Mary.
Yes. I don't know, maybe I know a little, not too much, but I know about the Bricha in Yugoslavia, but maybe do you want me to talk about it? To say something? So, very quickly. So it was, I think yesterday that somebody mentioned that most of the Jews of Yugoslavia, of the different countries, actually stayed in Yugoslavia. They were integrated in this country, and not many had left. But Yugoslavia was a very important route, transition country for people, for survivors from Poland, Hungary, and Romania, and Belarus. And the stories are, I won't go into the stories, but what I can say is that although they traveled underground and illegally and with illegal documents, forged documents, the authorities, the Yugoslavian authorities, didn't look their way, closed their eyes and didn't bother them and let them move. And there's one story of a group that was supposed to stay just 1 week in a house that was only, I think near Zagreb, a house that was supposed to be a university with no roof and no windows, and they were supposed to be there 4,000 people just 1 week until the ship arrived to take them, and there were problems, and they stayed there 3 months with no food, sleeping on the floor, and winter came, and the situation was so bad that the Bricha commander called the Yugoslavian authorities, although it was illegal, and told them, help, help those people because they can't stay, they can't be there during the winter. And the Yugoslavians did help.
Avisag, we both know that these women that you talked about considered to be actually Mizrahi. And I wonder, yet in Israel they would call them distinction between Tov, Sfaradi, בסדר. Sfaradi. What is their place in gender studies? In Sephardi, as a Sephardi, sorry.
I don't think that in gender studies there is an information in Israel about these women. Here in Serbia, there are researchers about imported women that fought in the resistance, but also that were in the communist movement before the war. So Olga Alkalaj is mentioned in one of those studies, not only as a communist, but as a feminist, as a lawyer, and also she was one of the women who established the journal, the feminist journal. Woman Today, I'm sorry. It was a journal of more communist, and so Olga Alkalaj is mentioned, but here in Serbia, in Israel, not yet.
So you have a mission. You have a mission now. And anyway, Lily, I don't agree with you so much about Mizrahi and Sephardi. I tell you why. If you take the Moroccan, for example, some of them are Sephardi. If you take Libyan, some of them Sephardi. And how do I know? Not because I studied, because they get passports from Portugal and Spain. And they are Mizrahi.
Okay. Please, I just want, about your questions, maybe okay.
גם עיראקים, יש להם, יש כאלה, ודאי.
Yvonne, please, I just want to explain to our colleagues that don't know Hebrew, there is the category of Mizrahim, and this category is actually invented by the Zionists in Israel, and they actually put the Jews from Arab countries, but also from Bulgaria and the former Ottoman places, they put them into one basket. But actually, if we want to separate Sephardic Jews and Ashkenazic Jews, is mainly by the way they are prayer, okay? That's the first thing. It's not only the prayers, it's sometimes other things, okay?
And so on.
Yeah, customs, rituals, and that is why that here in Belgrade and also in Sarajevo, there were Ashkenazic and Sephardic communities, okay? And they both have other synagogues because the Ashkenazic, they had their own prayers and the Sephardic had their own, okay? Yeah, just a second. But in Sephardic and Mizrahic in Israel, there is a problem. Why? Because Sephardic people, those one who were expelled from Spain in 1492, they see themselves as, in Israel, it's called Samech Tet, pure Sephardic, okay? The Sephardim, they have a lot of pride, a Sephardic pride, okay? And sometimes they distinguish themselves from the other Jews that called Mizrahi, like my grandparents that came to Israel from Yemen, from Baghdad. So what is the difference between Mizrahi and Sephardic? They still pray in the same books of prayers in the synagogue, but those from Yemen, Baghdad, India, or Iran, Morocco is a little bit complicated, as Yvonne said. They wasn't from Spain. And we have to realize that these categories are political categories, okay? It's very, very political, and we have to be very to be careful with this.
Perhaps we can leave this discussion for another time and return
יש
to
גם
our
גרמנים
focus here.
ממוצא ספרדי.
There are more people in the back and in the front who would like to...
Yeah, a question from an Ashkenaz. Verena, I suppose that most of Sinti and Roma women were illiterate. And do you know who wrote the letters for them?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting because that's also what the police investigated. And if you look at the whole network, so some lived in so-called mixed marriages, and then it was a woman who was not a member of the Sinti or Roma community and was educated in a Catholic school, for example. She wrote many letters also for other women. And in other cases, the police records show that owners and employees of tobacco shops wrote them. In some cases, a pastor from Magdeburg also wrote them on behalf of the community. And I think that's interesting because then we see the larger network behind it and how risky it was for everyone who was involved. Also for the tobacco shop owners and employees, they got questioned by the police and accused of illegally providing legal help. And so the police also threatened them. And also many of these women went to Berlin or to Magdeburg police office and spoke in person to the police officers. No.
Naomi, I think. There's two more in the back.
Thank you to all four of you for bringing such diverse topics to us today. I have a question or maybe a clarification for myself for Verena. I was wondering, so the profile of the people who were criminalized in your research, do you understand them to be, let's say, just undesirable categories that were criminalized, or do you see them as maybe people who had some issues that were overblown in order to further marginalize them? So this is kind of my thought. How do you understand, or maybe both? It's also an option.
Yeah, so it's very important that you stress that they are not criminals but get criminalized. I think that's very important because in the whole process of criminalization, anti-Semitism, anti-Gypsyism, misogyny and so on also play a role, I would say. And not in every case. I think in the case of Zita, because like the paragraph I showed, paragraph 42b, courts could only sentence the person affected to a mental hospital if there was also some kind of other criminal act involved. And I think in her case, you see the spiral of criminalization. So she was already marginalized, and the way she reacted to the marginalization only criminalized her more and more and more. And for her, I think it was hard to get out of this spiral, and it escalated so that she eventually also did commit acts that were criminal acts. So she did steal, so the criminal act that was ascribed to her was that she stole papers from a prosecutor's office, which is, I think she was desperate, and then she acted in a criminal offense. But I think we have to, in this situation, see the spiral that led her to the situation to act in this way. And here, criminalization, I think, is very important. and it's a process that affected many groups of people who were marginalized already.
I guess I'm asking, was this a strategy to target political enemies? So, for example, this pastor, does he all of a sudden get, branded as a potential enemy of the state or so, and then this is just one more tool to create kind of a base of people to...
So I put it in the context of the Nazi orders against so-called asocials, which was also a kind of label that could be used for many different kinds of people in order to incarcerate them in a concentration camp. And Jews were affected if they were kept in registers as supposed criminals, but then you can ask again, were they really criminal, or was it anti-Semitism that put this criminal acts on their records? And it's I think we have to see more. When we do research, we often think of victim groups and the Nazi orders to persecute these groups, but the Nazis also created a lot of repression tools to affect many different groups of people, as in these labels like prowlers or asocials. And then it did not only target political opponents, but it could target anyone who violated the norms and ideals of the Nazi society. And I would say in this case, it's not just political, it's also like norms of social life and how people were supposed to live according to the Nazi ideals.
There was one here and 2 questions in the back.
I think the 2 questions in the back and then back to Lily. Okay, then a comment and then question.
Just a comment about illiteracy. It's not only women, but also Sinti and Roma men. And we have a beautiful story written chapter by Primo Levi, the gypsy, when he is writing a letter to the gypsy's sweetheart. So the question is, of course, not only the gypsy who is illiterated in the story, but hopefully if the letter gets to his sweetheart, who is going to read it. That's it.
Okay, so 2 questions in the back.
The questions in the back, they've been waiting for their turn.
2 questions in the back.
Well, actually, she asked part of my question. The other part of my question was, you mentioned the case of Zita N and how she was murdered in the T4 program. I wondered if you knew what proportion of those who became subject to that legislation were subsequently murdered in the T4 program.
Yeah, thank you. That's definitely, I just started this to look at the bigger picture. And this is a question I also need to answer in more detail. But what I can highlight for now is already that the T4 killing program was not the only way they got affected. There were also this intersection of different labels. So people who were accused of being crawlers, they could be later on also be labeled as asocials, and then be incarcerated in concentration camps. So that's where like the different mechanisms intersect, but it's something I need to answer in more detail. But for this case, it's evident. Yeah.
Yes, my question is for Avisag. It's about a question of dynamics between Ashkenazi and Sephardic groups in Belgrade. Did you find any interesting differences between, because Frida Filipović, she mentioned a special type of Serbian anti-Semitism only against Ashkenazi Jews, but also dynamic between these two groups, because I found that in work of Frida Filipović, so I would like to ask about your research.
Actually, there is a little differences between the community in Sarajevo and Belgrade, and it's due to historian facts that Serbia became autonomous before Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I can answer you about Bosnia that till the interwar, both of the community were quite separated, and there is even a short story and funny by Rikica Ovadia from the end of the 19th century that two old Sephardic women decided to go to an Ashkenazic synagogue. They were there, and suddenly they heard, boom, a clash. And the one asked the second one, what happened? What happened? So the other said, nothing, just a Schwabo fell. And Schwabo, that Krinka know about it more than I, it was the name for the Germans who came from Austria-Hungary to Bosnia. So Sephardic, they named the Ashkenazim Schwabo Jews. Yeah, Austrian Jews. So they had, each community had their own institutes and their own synagogue. But Zionism and the youth organizations in Bosnia were both Ashkenazic and Sephardic in the interwar period, and also Ashkenazim and Sephardim went to study in Vienna. And over there, they met other Sephardic from other communities from the Balkan and other Ashkenazim. So after they back to Sarajevo, they worked together in Zionist organizations, but they were together, but most of the marriages were between Sephardim. There were a few Sephardim and Ashkenazim, not that much. And there were also two groups of Zionists movements in Sarajevo, because there were Ashkenazim and Sephardim that were organized in the Zionist movement under the federation in Zagreb, but a little group of intellectual, Sephardic intellectuals said, no, we don't want to be like all the Zionists from all of Yugoslavia, because they want us to study only Hebrew, and they want us to be as Zionist as Ashkenazim, but we are not willing to give our language, our Ladino, and our Sephardic identity. We can be Zionist and Sephardic, because our Sepharadism is our Judaism, and our Judaism is our Sepharadism. So there were actually two groups, and this called the 1924 Sarajevo dispute.
Yeah, I believe if nobody else is, so I am the last.
Oh, we have one more in the front. Okay.
To Alessandro, two questions, the same topic. Is there any movie about this woman that you talked about? I mean, maybe a documentary or a TV series or something? Because I know there is a movie about playing with Sophia Loren, and she's playing as a Jewish woman in Italy. I will send you the link if you would like. And she was also saved by some other woman. So I wonder if you know about more. And the second thing is, how can you explain that in such a Catholic area, The women are so activist because we know that the Catholic women in Italy are very traditional and very obedient by the culture.
About documentaries or movies about these three women, for now not, but we know that there is a project of a television series made by a Greek director about the Jews of Rhodes, in which will be represented also the roundup of the Jews of Rhodes and their deportation. I hope that they don't forget the contribution of Soju Pepi family about the rescue of many Jews of Turkish nationality, and not only them in Rhodes. I know that there is project because my master Marcello Pezzetti is involved in that as an historical advisor. He reached in his home in Germany the director and the producer, and they are starting to work in this project. For the others, no, I don't know about other documentaries or TV series about them. Only some TV services made thank you to us. For example, in the Giorno della Memoria in Italy, in the inauguration of the garden, we talk about these figures and also about Sister Rosina De Muro, Carmen Azzeri, and Bianca Ripepi Soju. About the movie with Sophia Loren, it is a representation, an Italian free representation of the romance, the life in front of La Vie de François, of Romain Gary, a great writer, or French Jew writer. It is a free transposition re-ambiented in Italy. Of this romance, there are two big movies, one made in the 70s with Simone Signoret, and the second made for Arte in 2010. Is almost criticable because he put the history in Italy, and there is a sort of comparison between the Shoah and the racism today to the immigrants, because the little child that the woman take with her is an immigrant boy from the immigration. It combine different topics. So it is not the only Holocaust movie that Sophia Loren, that is a great friend of Israel, made. She made, for example, with the director Daniel Mann in '64, Judith. That is a movie about a Jewish survivor survived thanks to a Nazi criminal that now is in Egypt to arm the Egypt against Israel, and she took in force in a kibbutz to found this man and block this man. Yes, trying to block this man. Yes, it's not the only movie about the Holocaust that made Sophia Loren. That is also, I don't know if you know. There is Soleil, yes. Sophia Loren is particularly because she's connected with the Mussolini family. I don't know if you know. Her sister is the mother of Alessandra Mussolini, the niece of Mussolini. It is also in political in Italy. So, about the activity of the woman in the church is incredible. Is really, really incredible. Also in Assisi, for example, we have the sisters of the convents involved in the so-called Assisi underground in saving the Jews. I think that it is the sign of a sort of independence by the woman, and we didn't talk more about that until now. We must more talk about this aspect of woman church and the woman courage in the church. Not only about this nurse, but also about others.
Your last question?
Okay, that's nice. Alessandro, it's for you actually. It's a comment, maybe not a question. You study the righteous of nation and recognized by Yad Vashem. You can get this recognition only if you are not Jewish. Only non-Jews receive this. If you are a Jew who risks his life to save Jews, you cannot get it from Yad Vashem. Nonetheless, there is an organization, Bnei Brit International Organization, which since the beginning of this century commemorates Jews who risk their lives in order to save Jews. And so far, I think about 650 received this recognition, and 15 of them are Italians. So I wonder if any of them are Sardinians.
Absolutely, there is a history also from Sardinia, but it's an American Sardinian history. Her name was Martha Lewis, Martha di Lac. She was born in New York in 1888. She was American. She was a wonderful woman, a sportive woman in the nation, an opera singer with a great international career in front of her. Martha di Lac, it was her art name. Still today, her the signatures are on eBay, quotes very lot of money. She known a Sardinian, not Jewish man, Antonio Pau, a rich man from Cagliari, and she decided to leave her husband, her American Jewish husband, which is not all good, and marry this man, go in Cagliari with him, and abandon her career of opera singer, singing only for beneficenza in the Sunday in a local in Cagliari. They had one son, and this son was studying in Florence during the anti-Semitic laws. She go in 41-42 to take her son from Florence to the vacation, and they found the collegaments with Sardinia blocked, and they decided to hide in Rome. Thanks to Amedeo Strazzera Perniciani, the first director of Regina Coeli and also of Rebibbia prison, they were fake documents, and they lived the 2 years of the Nazi occupation in front of the synagogue in Via del Tempio number 2, the day of the second roundup, not the first, but the roundup of the Fosse Ardeatine, the Ardeatinian cave massacre. The Nazis and the fascists took their building. They recognized their Viennese accent. They lived many years also in Vienna like an opera singer. And they distract these Nazi people, passing herself for a Vienna origin woman, talking with them in dialect of Vienna, distracting them, and thanks to her, many of the people of this building, including her son, can exit and escape from the Ardeatinian cave massacre. It's an incredible story. They returned after the war in Cagliari. She is buried in Cagliari in Cemetery San Michele. She died 10 years after the war in 1953. Very poor because the husband, it was also a profiteer with her because with the anti-Semitic law, she take with him all the patrimony of her to not bring them to the fascists and don't restitute her the patrimony. She died alone and poor, but it was a very courageous woman, and he saved lives. So we have a history about that also.
Well, it was a very enlightening and very interesting discussion. I would like to thank all the
There is a project also of a movie.
speakers, and also thank you all who really followed attentively and had so many comments and questions. And with this, we can wrap up this panel and today's work. And so we can go and have some coffee, and you can relax or continue the discussion. Up to you. Thank you.
Coffee.
And before we go, just quick reminder from me. Each of you got the email from me today, just to remind you that tomorrow morning, yes, we are departing for Memorial Center Staro Sajmište. We have a bus waiting for us.
it will not wait for us. That was the point. So I suggested that we meet at 9:15 in front of the Institute so we could here downstairs, yes, so we could get across the street where the bus will come at exactly 9:30. So see you tomorrow. Yes.